Hello and welcome to a new episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr, where we talk about the art and culture of running an independent record label. And thank you so much for joining and listening in and all the support that we've had, the reviews on iTunes and the star rating on Spotify. Thank you so much. Today, we're launching a brand new series called Artists on Labels. Now, let me explain. It's not entirely brand new. This was a series that was exclusive to our Patreon about a year and a half ago. And it was so successful, people really liked doing it. There were some of the episodes I felt like, boy, I wish the main audience could hear these as well. And so I've recorded some new Artists on Labels series episodes with some incredible artists, including today's episode, which was actually previously released to our Patreons. And it's with the artist Pictoria Vark. Now, Pictoria, or also known as Victoria, released her album, The Parts I Dread, on Get Better Records back in April. So this episode was recorded maybe about 6 to 10 months ago, but I've edited out some of the things that maybe weren't relevant to today. But we talk a lot about the artist perspective of finding a record label, what they were looking for in finding a record label, how they submitted to a record label, their expectations for the release, lots of really cool insights. And that's the whole goal of this series, is for us as record labels to hear from artists. I think that's what's unique about Artists on Labels, the series, is that we can kind of step away from the music industry and step away from our little bubble of record label owners and hear from artists and talk to artists and ask artists questions that are relevant to us, and just a kind of a different perspective. That's what I like about it. And I think you'll find this interview really enlightening, really helpful. It's such a great story, and I think it's so relevant to all of us smaller labels. Of course, you can check out Get Better Records that we've had on the show by going to getbetterrecords.com, and the artist Pictoria Vark by going to Pictoria Vark, which is just Victoria Park with the first letter switched around, but pictoriavark.bandcamp.com.
Like, I find it very helpful for record labels to kind of step out of their echo chamber for a second and hear from artists' perspectives about labels a little bit and whatnot. I remember we were chatting, I think, a couple of months ago, or maybe a year ago, or years ago, I don't remember, but you were searching for a record label. Was that right?
Yes. Yeah. I remember emailing you because I was just a fan of the podcast and just wanted to reach out because, you always say feel free to reach out. You can always contact me. So it's really cool to be doing this now. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's awesome. And what were you, take me back to that time. And first of all, I'm curious why you were listening to a podcast about record labels as an indie artist. We have tons of indie artists who listen, and I'm just curious as to, I would never think to do that. I would look for podcasts about DIY musicians.
Yeah. So in college, I actually was doing quite a few music industry internships. So I interned at ATO and Mom and Pop. And Terrorbird in my last year of college. Cool. Yeah. So kind of over time, and I went to a tiny liberal arts school with no music business program. It became something that I was increasingly interested in, kind of in not only making my own career easier. And so I fully understand kind of what I'm getting myself into, what something that would work for me look like what that would, what I would want, because I feel a lot of the time, if you're not actively studying about it, there's a lot of details and jargon that can be really easy to not completely understand. And then that can catch up to you 20 years later. And then you're like, oh wait, I didn't want to make that decision actually. So I really wanted to avoid that as much as possible.
That's pretty, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's pretty wise of you, because a lot of artists kind of like being naive and sort of like to be ignorant about the process to kind of protect their creativity or their, artistry. So, but I think that's really smart for you to kind of say, no, actually, I want to learn this stuff.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I kind of started my solo project too because I wanted to like have more control, more say about kind of what the project would turn into. In previous bands where I was like just playing bass, I kind of ended up like being the one that would book the shows and like run the social media pages anyway. So kind of like already having this like, I don't know, this business oriented like mindset or like an aspect to it, because there's so many good musicians I know that like just don't market themselves or don't want to market themselves. And I think it's like at the detriment of their own like potential.
Yeah. I totally agree. I 100% agree. Before we go on, I was just thinking about this today, and I actually mentioned this to you when we were emailing years ago about your name, Pictoria Vark, and how like literally a stone's throw from here is an actual Pictoria Vark. It just messes with my brain so much because I drive by it every day. And in Canada, actually, it's more common because Victoria is the Queen Mother or whatever. So anyway, it's so funny. I drive by Pictoria Vark every day. Which, by the way, because I was Googling it today, and of course, all these Google Maps things came up. But it was kind of interesting for you to go with Pictoria Vark, which is funny because when you Google that, it's only you that shows up. So smart.
Yeah, that's actually how I ended up with that name, like for my solo project, because if I were to use my actual name, it just like the SEO would be horrible. There's like other people who are famous with that name on top of the actual geographic location. So I was like, I want to create a space that's just like only me. And then
that is, I mean, I've actually talked about that on material and stuff, but like I think a lot about SEO and anybody should really, because that's what somebody wants to check out a band. They're just going to search for the words, you know? And so you want to get found because it all kind of boils down to, you want your music heard, right? You want more people to experience your music. And there are things like you having like Victoria Park, not everybody would have a Victoria Park, but just those two words would bring up so many types of results. But Pictoria Vark wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like those little things, like in, I don't know, that I feel like are, some people think about him and some people don't. And I think like, you know, if it's not something you are interested in or care about and you just want to make the music, I think that's great too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it's like, to me, for what you're doing, it's a means to an end. It's taking care of this means that you get to do more music and thinking about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. What made you, so let's go back to when we were talking about looking for a label. And what made you want a label or think that you wanted a label as an independent artist?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I think there's kind of been a development in between like when I sent that email and kind of when I was label shopping to kind of where I am now and kind of like seeing the bigger picture. And I think at first I just wanted to like have someone make some tapes, like just help me do a rollout because I'd never done one before with this like debut record. And then I tweeted just because like some labels follow me and just like to see, just put out some feelers. And that's when Get Better Records like reached out because we'd been like mutuals there for a while. I sent them like a few demos I had. We kept in touch. I sent them the full mix. And then we had another conversation about kind of what something would look like. And then, ended up signing with them. And now it's like, we're doing vinyl and there's going to be international distribution. Like it's much larger scale than I could have imagined. Like, and kind of weird for me too, as like an artist who is kind of small, like, you know, relatively to kind of the scale that things are moving in.
Wow.
But it's been really just so incredible. And I'm just really fortunate that like they were really just interested in working with me in the music. And they have just like fostered such a beautiful and wonderful and kind community around the label. So it feels really, really special to be part of.
That's so awesome to hear. And I have some questions about the word community in a little bit, but I think you're giving a lot of really bad advice to indie artists to just tweet, somebody sign me, and then you get a record deal and international distribution. That doesn't work, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I also like this. I feel like, this is something I had been thinking about for a while. So I've been building up my Twitter since 2019. I only got it like 2 or 3 years ago, and have just really been like, I want to just like build this platform up a little bit in music and in music spaces, and build those connections early before I'm even thinking about pitching to a label.
Wow.
Yeah, because all of those things
smart.
like really add up, yeah, because it's one thing if like you're cold emailing someone and hoping that they're going to sign you from your demos, but it's another if you're like building relationships with these people before you're even asking anything from them, or trying to work with them or anything.
That's genius. And also, it's like I can't speak for your label. I don't know if you've heard this from your label, but to be able to work with an artist who has their act together, who has studied a little bit about the industry, who has a social media presence that's older than a day old, you know what I mean? It's when you hear from these, when you get demo submissions from people and they're totally disorganized, and it's just like, I don't want to work with this person because I'm going to be essentially a parent, as opposed to a partner. So to kind of, to come up against an artist like you would be like a dream, I think, for labels. It'd be very cool.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I totally get what you mean, because I also, my day job is I work at Refresh Records. I know you talked to Josh on a few episodes ago.
I knew that. Of course I know that. Ugh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I am, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. And so now I'm like seeing those submissions like on our end from Refresh. Mm-hmm. And it's like really being able to see the difference between someone who like has a vision and an idea and kind of like has put together some things that make it easier on our end to like support them, versus someone who's like expecting a label to kind of do everything. And I think that's also like another misconception, is like, just because you have a team or have a label, like that doesn't mean you're going to blow up overnight. There's still like a lot of work left to do on the artist end, in terms of marketing and everything else.
Yeah. It's really cool, like, to have so many, and I feel like I've tried to do this in myself, is to have so many like elements of industry experience and different interning at labels, now working at a label, being an artist, being on a label. That's just got to be really helpful for you, that you've really seen all sides of the cube.
Yeah, it's been really, and I feel like I didn't have this like broader perspective of like the amount that I've learned over the years about the industry until like kind of recently, and like helping some friends and like doing stuff at the label and being like, oh, I kind of know kind of what's happening and what we're talking about, and having like, I was a talent buyer for a little bit at my college, and like doing shows, doing live sound. My last internship was in radio. And so all of these different things like kind of coming together, but still like from a very DIY mindset, like, didn't go to music business school, mostly learned all of this like on my own, using resources like yours. So yeah.
That's awesome. Did you have a piece of work completed that you, when you were reaching out to labels, like were you close to finish a final record?
Yeah, so I knew it was going to be a full length. I stated that in like the pitches that I was doing. But I only chose like 3 demos to send, because I know not everyone has like a full time. But after that, I did send the full record.
Okay. And so was it mixed and mastered, or like was it essentially done on that you had taken care of everything?
Yeah, everything was fully mixed when I sent it.
Wow, that's cool. And that's also a nice thing for a label, I think, right?
Yeah, to like really hear the full picture and not have to like worry about kind of what pieces are still moving.
Yeah.
And knowing that like a project is finished and like ready for the next step. Mhm.
Were you aware of the wait time that you were maybe getting yourself into if you founded label, as opposed to saying, okay, you had these mixes done and uploading them to DistroKid yourself?
Yeah, I remember wanting to release my album by October of last year.
Okay.
And then had that conversation of like, maybe October won't work, and we pushed it back all the way to April
Oh
of
my
this
gosh.
year.
So sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you again. When did you finish when did you have the mixes done?
I think May or June.
Okay.
I think,
Okay.
oh, sorry. Masters were done in May or June.
May or June. So
or July, yeah.
Okay. So your mixes were probably a little bit earlier than May.
Yes.
And so you were thinking fall release?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
And now it's coming out in April.
Yes. And
Okay.
the vinyl isn't coming until August of this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
we submitted
brutal.
it in July of last
Wow.
year. So
13 months.
yes.
Wow. And that's still fingers crossed, right?
Yes.
Right.
Mhm. Yes.
Wow. That's really, that's interesting. So how does that, like, are you cool with that? Are you cool with, like the idea, being a year from when the record was finished?
At first I was a little hesitant just because I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so old by the time it comes out.
Yeah.
What if people don't like it anymore?
Right.
What if, it's not a spring record? Because I had a vision that it was going to be a fall record. But over time I have kind of settled into it and kind of like how things are going, and it's given a lot of time for other things to kind of fall into place. So
cool.
Kind of throughout the whole release, I'll also be touring on bass with 2 bands and playing solo at a festival. So I'll be out on the road for 5 months as the rollout's happening.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of a trade-off, right? It's like, do I have the support of this amazing label but have to wait 8 months, or do I do it myself and you get to release it on Bandcamp right now if you want it, kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had friends who are asking me, kind of weighing options like that. And I think it's really up to an artist at the end of the day and kind of what they want to do with their music. There's no option that's better or worse per se. It's just giving yourself the time and having the knowledge to know what decision you want to make.
Yes. Right. What about community? Because you had mentioned that a little bit. So what have you noticed or felt a sense of community as opposed to, and maybe you can answer this too from the community that you're involved with at Refresh, but as that community you get with being on a label with your label mates, as opposed to how lonely it can sometimes be as an indie artist?
Yeah, it's been really great. I think in speaking to both of those different communities that overlap a little. Yeah.
Oh, good.
But we on Get Better, they've scheduled a few different Zoom calls, kind of talking about social media best practices, or how do we deal with COVID, and coming up with ideas kind of together about how we can support each other,
like a staff meeting.
Kind of, but it's with it's with people who work at the label and friends of the label.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of artists on the label, which is just, it's been really nice. And also getting that FaceTime with people who you mostly just see on a screen,
Yeah.
Or not on a screen, but on
on
Twitter, someone's profile. Yeah. So it's been, and I genuinely really like all of the people that I've met, from that are on Get Better, and all of the people that I work with, having a lot of conversations, just not even about, business or music, just really kind people, who I trust a lot, which is, I think I have been really lucky to have a lot of those who fall into places that are really supportive, but I know that the industry is not necessarily like that,
Right.
And feel really fortunate to have that, support for sure.
Yeah. I sometimes I forget about that, the community. I know we have the community of there's a community of record label heads, that's like the community I'm involved in, but I often forget what it must feel like for an artist to be on a label, to have the label heads who are, mentoring or supporting, and then you have the label mates, and even if they're worldwide, that they can hopefully prop up your release, and it can be a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. It just like expands your network. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's right. There is this vanity element to getting signed that we've all kind of felt, or just feeling validated or more legitimate with a label logo. Do you feel that in any way, or is it just me? Like, is that something that you ever think about?
Oh no, it's definitely been like super validating to have someone be like invested in your project.
Yeah.
And this was a project I didn't think was going to be much. Again, like when I first emailed you, I was just like, I hope someone is willing to make like a few cassettes for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And here we are.
What do you? Okay, so let's update this timeline for a second here. So the record's done in April. We're talking right now in February. This will probably be released in March. And so I'm just trying to bring our listeners into this for a second. And so the record is at the pressing plan, and it's now being teased to the public. I think there's a video tomorrow. Is that right? I'm excited to see that. Every time I see a screenshot, I'm like, oh, great, it's out. Oh, no, it's not out. So anyway, but what is the role of an artist, or what do you think, or what are you doing as an artist right now in this limbo period as your label is preparing the release? Like, what's your role, or how can an artist contribute to the promotional efforts?
Yeah, I've been on social media a lot, just trying to like logging back into my personal Facebook to like make a post, like really trying to like.
So grandma sees it.
Yeah, exactly. Like hitting all of those avenues that like sometimes you forget about.
Yeah.
And just really making sure like, online trying to promote, because it's just helps so much more if it's not just your label, if you're there too.
Yeah.
And promoting it like as much as you can.
Oh, shoot. I had a fresh question off of my notes, and then I was listening to you and I forgot it. Oh, shoot. Oh, man, this is bad radio. Okay, well, maybe it'll come back to me, but like, talk to me about this, the whole rollout process. Is there, I'm just going to write it down because I remember it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the rollout process. Like, do you enjoy it? Do you like this lead up? Are there things that, like, do you like teasing the public and that kind of stuff?
Yes and no. It's nice to like be engaged and like feel like people listening to it and being like, okay, the music is out and people can hear it. And it kind of like takes on a new life of its own because other people, it's like out in the world, it's like not mine anymore. But also I definitely enjoy like writing and recording much more. And I feel very zoomed out in a way where it's harder to like get back to that place of like just writing individual songs and like just focusing on that, because I'm like thinking about like things in a much broader conceptual visual sense. So I'm hoping to like, by the end of this year, kind of put a cap on that and kind of be able to enter that, like to zoom back in a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Does having the support of a label, having this validation, does it stimulate more creativity?
Not at the moment. Well, I'm not quite sure. I think I'm a little stressed out about like how this, focusing so much on trying to get like, promo stuff and doing scheduling, press and kind of all these other things, that it's like been hard to just kind of be creative because it is very like businessy right now.
Yeah. I actually, I'm the same way. I kind of go into seasons where I'm like put on a business suit and promote the record, and writing a song is the furthest thing from my mind, and I feel like I can never do it again. And then all of a sudden you're in that beautiful creative space where you're just drinking coffee and writing lyrics, and you're like, I don't care if anyone listens to this. You're almost like, I can't really hold both at the same time.
Same, yeah. So I'm really excited to like get back to that place, hopefully, and not think about like a concept for an album and can just like write a song.
Yeah, exactly. What expectations do you have? How are you setting yourself up to not be disappointed come April, or what expectations do you have? I'm being delicate here, but with your label, because I know that there's a lot of sometimes when I'm working with an artist, I forget to check in on them and to check in on their expectations, because otherwise, how do I know if I don't know what their level of success is or how they're measuring success. So have you had that conversation with Get Better, or how are you kind of tempering your expectations?
That has definitely been hard. Because just kind of not knowing what to expect from this record, because it's already in some ways exceeded my expectations, but
right.
and trying to remember that too. But also still wanting the Pitchfork review or the NPR thing, even though it's it doesn't necessarily mean anything, so it's been a lot of balancing. I think it's definitely something I want to talk to them about, as it gets a little closer and kind of come April, kind of what that looks like. But it'll be nice too to be on tour until June and planning other tours, hopefully this summer, and working on another music video or something to keep some of that creative energy, but also building, maintaining some of the momentum. So it's not just a huge drop off. It's just okay, I've run out of stuff to do and put out now that the album's out, and I don't really know what to do with myself. Yeah.
It's funny how we move the goalposts, how, you tweeted, you got signed by a great label, you're doing vinyl, and now all of a sudden you have new goals. It's so hard to stop and kind of say, wow, I'm really thankful for these things that have already happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just I think the connections and the friendships that I've made in this process are it feels like that's already, success and winning.
Well, I love Get Better. It's such a cool label, and I think it looks like a great fit. Well, Victoria, it's so good to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was really great talking to you.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out this record that came out last year, but music is always relevant. So make sure you check out that record and check out their label, Get Better Records, as well. This series is going on for the next 4 episodes. Some incredible artists coming up like Bartees Strange and Wheatus. So make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for listening.